Hello again, everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event. It figures to be an exceptional one that doesn't need any build-up.
Are you ready?
Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop fighting.
This is the main event of the evening.
Athletes, huddle up. It's time to begin. Get focused. Let's go.
Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict Athlete Podcast. Everybody, Coach Blue Robinson here. I want to thank everyone for downloading, subscribing, and giving us some feedback on these podcasts. We are rapidly approaching our 100th episode, and I want to give a thanks and shout out to everyone who's reached out and gave us suggestions and really kind of leaned into this podcast for help and support. It's what we want to do, help turn the mess of addiction into the message of sobriety. Athletes, if you can, jump on our Facebook page and our website. We have our Addict Athlete Certified Sober Coaching Program that's open and available to help open up chapters of Addict Athlete throughout the country. We welcome 2 more chapters in Telluride, Colorado, and also in Wisconsin. So welcome, coaches. We're glad to have you on board. Athletes, I am excited today because we have a special guest, one that I met through Randy Grimes, and specifically about the challenges of this specific man who's gone through the ringer when it comes to addiction and recovery, but also in the professional sporting world. We are lucky today to have a guy on here who is definitely doing the mess to a message stuff wholeheartedly. This is Vance Johnson. Say hello, brother.
What's up, guys? Good to see you, man.
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to do this. Like I said, I've been reading about you and learning more about what you're doing these days, and you are busy, man, but you found a new passion in this career choice, it sounds like.
I did. As a former professional athlete, playing 10 years in the NFL and 3 Super Bowls, you would think that most athletes that play that long would eventually retire and go off into the sunset and just enjoy their life forever. Yep. But it wasn't until, and we'll get into the story, that I get a chance to share that whole journey for me was for this meeting right now with you.
That's amazing, brother. Yeah, and mercy. Some of the stuff I've heard and read about you, you've definitely, on and off the field of battle, man, you've definitely taken some punches. And I admire your courage and your strength for wanting to really get in deeper to the issues of addiction and recovery. So, Vance, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about you? Like you said, professional football, 3 Super Bowls. I have a friend, his name is Jesse, who just, when he found out I was talking to you, he's like, "I'm coming to your house." I'm like, "Well, you better hurry because it only lasts so long." But tell me a little bit about you, about your history, and really kind of maybe the addiction and how it kind of gripped you to the point where you threw in the towel, you had to surrender. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm originally from New Jersey, and quite the place to be from, especially right now with what's happening out there with this pandemic. Yeah. And but there's nothing new because Jersey's always been a good place to be from, no matter what time of life you were born out there. So I'm originally from Jersey, and how I came about being born there is my father was born in Jersey. He was one of 6 siblings. He was a kind of a gangbanger, ran the streets because his father died at a very young age. So when you don't have a father raising you in life, the streets raise you, especially on the East Coast. And my dad ended up getting in a lot of trouble. He was a part of a gang and was one of the last gang members alive. And so my father was forced to go to court. It was looking at spending a lot of time in prison and had to make a choice. Back in the 50s, they actually gave you a choice to either go to prison or join the service. They don't do that anymore.
No.
So my dad joined the service. And so when he joined the service, he was stationed out in Arizona. Mm-hmm. He was 21 years old. And after a while, he had a chance to go off base, and he ended up meeting a young lady in a car who was at a James Brown concert, believe it or not. I don't know if any of your viewers remember James Brown. Mm-hmm. And he knocked on the window and he introduced himself to this young lady and asked her, "Hi, my name is Eugene. What's your name?" She says, "My name is Eugene." So you got Gene and Gene talking.
There you go.
Now he asked her, "Why aren't you in the concert?" And she said, "Well, I'm not old enough. I'm only 15 years old and they're selling alcohol." So my father is 21 years old talking to a 15-year-old. And so I always tell kids, if you're 15 years old, a young lady, don't talk to a 21-year-old dude. So,
oh, man. Yeah, run.
Anyway, he ends up finding out where this young lady lived at. And she lived on a cotton gin yard out in Marana, Arizona, where she picked cotton for a living. Wow. And eventually he started going to her high school and got on his knees and proposed to this 15-and-a-half-year-old. And that's how I came about being born.
Wow.
Well, after they got married, they flew back out to New Jersey. And that's where I was born at. And so we spent a lot of time out there. And unfortunately, though, my father kind of went back to his old ways when he was in Jersey. And it kind of freaked my mom out. So my mother went back out to Arizona with me and my sister because she didn't want to be around the issues that were happening with his gang banging, with his using, and especially with domestic violence. But now that he comes out to Arizona to be with his family, you know, they got a saying, you can take the brother out of Jersey, but you can't take Jersey out the brother.
Makes sense.
And so my father, when he gets to Tucson, Arizona, he's still, you know, doing his old things. And the other thing he starts doing, and my sister and I are old enough now that we're witnessing it, is the domestic violence got crazy, man. So I got a drunk dad who's beating on my mother, and my sister and I are seeing this, and I'm growing up with a lot of hatred in my life. Now, don't get me wrong. My thought at that time in my life was the only way I'm going to be something in my life is by achieving an identity. And so because I love watching sports, because my father was actually my first coach in football and track and baseball, what I noticed was whenever I did well and made him proud, he would beat on my mother less. Yeah, man, it was kind of crazy. So I grew up around a lot of trauma, and also a father who was a drug addict. Well, I wouldn't say drug addict, even though there was PCP back then. He was an alcoholic. He smoked weed. He came home late. And so he was a functional user. And I grew up really hating him and not wanting to be anything like him as a child. And it just took a matter of time before I started to really feel like, because I was getting good at sports, that this was my whole identity, that I was going to grow up one day and be famous and be rich and live life my way. And I didn't know that not having a good father in your life was going to lead to a lot of trauma that eventually would cause me to, and I'll share a little bit of that story, fall off the wagon, so to speak, and literally almost die.
Wow. So really with a young mother, I mean, almost the same story as I have here. My mother was married at 14, so just a year younger than yours. So I know exactly what you're talking about, being like almost like sibling age related instead of like seriously like mother child related.
Right.
And so, yeah, you do. You realize that there's so much like immaturity, but like desire to want to raise a family that way, but just not having the emotional, the mental capacity to be able to do so. And so, sounds like, yeah, man, it was pre-clandestine that you figured out the rules to the game real quick. If I do this, this won't happen, but I've got to stay away from this, or else this is going to happen.
Right.
And you use that mentality and that mindset to like excel. It sounds like, and is that where it took you?
You know, it's interesting that you said that, because that's exactly right. Now, in that trauma, I had to create a reality for myself. And so that's the reason why sports became so important to me. And I didn't feel like I was anybody unless I was participating or unless I was engaged in a track meet, a football game, or a baseball game. That's the only place I found my happiness. And it allowed me to be away from the trauma that was happening inside of my home. So when my father would come home late at night and be drunk, dude, I would be out running, because I didn't want to be around the craziness, especially when you see a mom getting smacked in the face and blood coming out of her face. I mean, it was so traumatizing that I just hated that man and everything that he stood for, because I was never going to grow up to be like him. You know, another thing too, since we're being transparent, you got a lot of athletes watching. One thing I did do, and I know you guys can relate with this, I used to sneak into my mom and dad's bedroom. And do you know, when I was sneaking into my mom and dad's bedroom, I looked in my father's closet one time and I saw this magazine. And I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. It's called Hustler.
Yeah. You know what? That same magazine was in my stepdad's closet. I know exactly what you're talking about. Weird how they keep the same place.
That's crazy, man. And so I would open that magazine up, and to me, that was happiness. I would say, I got a black dad who's kicking my black mom's butt, but when I open this magazine up, I see these beautiful naked white ladies smiling. I'm going to marry one of them when I grow up.
You're like, this is good. Yeah.
Right. This is good. So then I start seeing these VHS things, and I start watching these videos of people having sex. So I didn't even know, man. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
My phone may blow up, guys, because people reach out to me all the time. I'm so transparent. My phone numbers are on my Facebook page and all different types of ways to get a hold of me, but I didn't know how to block it.
You're good.
Anyway, so I kind of got introduced to pornography too back then, man. And so it was really tough for me to live through life without feeding my flesh to make myself feel good. And that was sports. That was the pornography that I was watching. And believe it or not, I wasn't having sex. I didn't have a girlfriend early on in my life. And I sure wasn't doing no drugs and alcohol, because I hated the man that was doing it. Now, by the time I got to high school, I got really good. I was one of the best in the country. In fact, I was one of the best in the world, believe it or not. In high school, I won the gold medal for the Pan American Games in Caracas, Venezuela, represented the United States of America in track and field.
Whoa.
And in football, what I would do is when I made touchdowns and stuff, man, my dad was still so tough on me that he would go out there and instead of making me have score 4 touchdowns, he made me score 5 touchdowns in one football game. But it made him proud. And so this is kind of what, again, I wanted to do to make myself famous. Eventually, because of domestic stuff that I grew up around with my father and me not really wanting to be involved in relationships because I didn't know how to be, I ended up going to college close to home because I wanted to stay close to my mom just in case I had to go back home and kick my freaking dad's butt, man.
You got to keep your eye on the game. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So by the time I'm 20, 21 years old, again, guys, I had not drank any alcohol. I hadn't smoked any weed. I hadn't taken no drugs. Now, the first thing I did was when I was around 19, almost 20, I lost my virginity. And unfortunately, because I didn't even know how it all worked out, she ended up getting pregnant my first time out, man. So this was my life. I had a child right away. And her mom and father told me that I had to quit football and go take care of his daughter and my child. But because I had dreams to be a famous athlete, I was like, dude, I'm not quitting football. I got goals in my life. Yeah. And so they wouldn't allow me to see my girlfriend and my daughter. And so I ended up cheating on her. And guess what I did? I got another girl pregnant.
Wow.
So
2 for 2.
Before I even make it, I got 2 kids before I'm even getting through my first year in college.
Yeah,
but
man.
My goal again was to make myself someone by being famous.
Mm-hmm.
And so I focused on my sports. My first play of my college career, I ran a 99-yard touchdown back. The fans went crazy. That made me feel good. I went to the NCAA championships in the long jump as a freshman in college. I beat the #1 jumper in the world, Carl Lewis, as a freshman in college. You can Google all this stuff. I was one of the best in the world. So again, it was about just creating this identity by achieving something, by working hard to do it, not realizing that I was broken.
Yeah.
So I ended up actually, brother, blowing Jerry Rice away in the 40 meters. I got drafted by the Denver Broncos. I'm flying out to Denver, Colorado. I land in Denver, and the newspaper says, Broncos add Vance. It was like the happiest day of my life, man.
Right.
Again, no addiction to me.
Yeah.
But this is where life starts now. Now here I am, very successful. I got a lot of money. And I ended up going to San Francisco 49ers Stadium out there in San Francisco. I dropped the punt. I thought that because we ended up losing the game, that it was going to be my fault and I was going to get cut. And so on the way to the practice field the next day, my friends who were drinking introduced me to alcohol for the first time in my life. I was almost 23 years old.
Wow.
When I drank that alcohol, man, I was like, oh my goodness, this feels amazing.
Yeah, just
boom. And I didn't get cut, right? So here I'm now introduced to alcohol. I started dating another girl. She introduced me to marijuana. So now I'm smoking weed. I'm drinking alcohol to cope with life. I got introduced to painkillers because of my injuries. And now I'm like, I'm so happy. Not even realizing that I had an addiction because the only time I was doing well, and I would even go to the ball games, guys, drunk sometimes.
Wow.
Right? But by the end of the second quarter, third quarter, I'm finally able to go out there and just really play hard. By taking pills, though, I was playing brave, too, not even understanding that my life was falling apart. So all during the beginning of my career, it was the beginning of my addiction. I had addiction to relationship. I had addiction to marijuana. I had addiction to painkillers. I had addiction to alcohol, but I was still functional. And during my career, especially in the very beginning, I thought that I'm not the one with the problem. My father had a problem. Everyone else has a problem. I'm famous because I got 85,000 fans that are cheering for me. Exactly. So let's long story short. I went to the Super Bowl really early on in my career. When I got home from the game, I was in my closet one day and I was so emotionally broken that, brother, I was trying to kill myself.
Man.
I was literally cutting my wrist.
Man.
My mother called me. By the grace of God, I didn't kill myself. I thanked her for stopping me from killing myself.
Wow.
And I got this girl, another girl pregnant, and I found out that she was cheating on me with my teammates. I'm not going to mention her name.
Yeah.
And so here I am now getting involved in my first domestic issue. I go home. I get in a fight with her. I push her across the bed. She hits her head against a closet door. She's laying on the ground, and she's not even breathing. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, my God, I'm going to go to prison. Dude, I carry her into the bathroom. I'm dumping water in her face. And finally, she starts to breathe. And do you know, I was even more angry that she woke up from being knocked out than anything. And so how do we cope with this, guys, when we only cope with life with using? I used more.
Oh,
more
yeah.
relationships, more alcohol, more weed, more pills, anything to just deal with life. 10 years, 3 Super Bowls. Do you know, I had so many issues happening during my career that because I was famous, they wouldn't even really put me in jail during that time. I had a car accident one time going over 100 miles an hour. I got put in the hospital. I was high. And so I asked the doctor to please not let the cops come do a test on me. Do you know they hid me down by the morgue?
Oh my gosh.
They
Really?
hid me by the morgue so the cops couldn't find me in the hospital.
Interesting.
One time
Wow.
I got pulled over by a cop going over 130 miles an hour. All I had to do was give him game tickets. I had these domestic issues. And so because I was famous and because there wasn't social media back then, I didn't have to go viral with my problems.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But
Thank
that
heavens.
10 years, man, it was just living in my addiction. And the only time I was happy is when everybody saw the edited version of Vance Johnson when he was doing well on the football field. I've been watching highlights of myself even recently saying, my good, I was really good. But it was the only time I was living in reality was when I was on the field.
Yeah, in the moment, right there. That's the only time.
The only time. Dude, I'm going to be really transparent, guys. I had 3 women pregnant at the same time during my career.
Wow,
3
man.
women pregnant. I had a girl that I was dating pregnant. I had my wife pregnant. And I had another man's wife pregnant. 3 women pregnant at the same time. Yeah. To this day, I have 3 sons that are the same age 33 years old.
Wow.
And you know what? I still didn't think that I had the problem.
Yeah.
I thought it was everybody else.
Part of the game. Yeah.
Exactly. So my addiction was relationships, sex, alcohol, pills, anything to make my flesh feel like I was going to be okay is what I did. After 10 years, several marriages during my career, even though I had 10 amazing years playing football with the Denver Broncos and was, one of the best all-time Denver Broncos, I did not even get cut. I didn't even retire. I just walked away from the game.
I saw that. So tell me a little bit about that decision, because you're right. Like, you just kind of poof, gone. What was it? What was your idea? What was your thought process of like, I just gotta fade away. I can't.
The first thing was I was a selfish son of a gun. I was selfish, and I had to go out possibly and compete against Rod Smith because I was a starter, and they brought Rod Smith and another ball player, and I was like, I'm not gonna be in the effing backup. And so that kind of is what started it. And the other thing was I was going through, at the time, my 4th divorce, and so I was like, I hate football.
Yeah,
I'm
done.
Hate football. And so I just didn't show up, literally. And so I didn't realize, guys, that climbing that high and achieving my identity, that when the game was over for me, the only place to go was down. And so on my way down, instead of crashing, what I did was I leaned on addiction, scratching at my identity, trying to hold on to something until I hit rock bottom. And so after my career, I just doubled the drugs, man. I doubled the alcohol. And because I was famous, people would give me whatever I wanted.
Right.
And so I even got married more times. I was having sex. And I was having sex 3-4 times a day with different women. It was just absolutely freaking crazy. I was out of my mind. I was out of my mind. I mean, listen, I don't mind putting myself up on a cross because I want people to see how this addiction does not discriminate. I don't care whether you're homeless and poor in the streets or whether you're rich and famous. It doesn't care who you are. It's going to get you if you have brokenness inside of you.
Yeah, and everyone can look at it and say, well, your grass is greener because you have this, or on the side of this, your grass is greener because you don't have all this. But when you boil it down, it's exactly the same. It's the same core issue, correct? I mean, it's the same.
Yeah, my grass is greener, just like those photos that you take and you put them on Instagram or you put them on Facebook. You only put the green one on there. So the grass is only greener because that's the lie that you live in.
Absolutely.
Right? Exactly.
Absolutely.
So in fact, I tell people all the time, listen, quit falling for what's happening around your world and thinking that just because you're not getting enough Facebook likes, just because somebody else's Facebook looks like they're happy, all you see is the edited version of their life. You don't know what's happening behind their life. They're probably dealing with an addiction or a loved one that's suffering with an addiction or a mental illness, right?
100%.
We got to be transparent, man. We got to be out there and let people know, because this is what you do. You save lives, and this is what I do. I save lives. And we'll get to more of that as I continue into my story.
Please do, because I'm curious about that. Because again, being in that social network and that light and just kind of in that popularity and all that kind of stuff, how hard was it for you to like raise your hand and be like, huge problem here, need some help,
Right.
deeper than I thought I'd ever be? I mean, because that's like, I mean, again, breaking anonymity. In 2012, when we started Addict to Athlete, 2011, I said, look, we're no longer anonymous because anonymity is killing people.
Woo!
And we got nailed so hard for that because you're doing it wrong. And I'm like, no, we're going to save lives. And so we took that stigma completely off. How was that for you to step in?
I thought I was the first one that said that because this is no longer anonymous, man.
Good minds and
No
great hearts
longer
think
anonymous.
alike, man. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, brother. So what happened after that was, again, I'm leaning on addiction. I'm leaning on relationships. Do you know I was married 7 times?
Yeah.
7 times.
Yeah.
And my oldest son comes over to the western slope of Colorado. So I left the Denver area because I wasn't famous anymore and I just needed to go somewhere so I can recreate myself. And I opened up my own restaurant with my name on it, thinking that that was going to be good for me. I got married for the 7th time, and I'm leaning on addictions and even cheating on the wife that I have at that time just to survive with my emotions, thinking that somehow this is going to make me feel good. Well, my oldest son came over to spend time with me. His name is Vaughn, and he was going to college. I put him up, and my son ends up needing to go see his mother because his grandfather had just died of cancer. And my son, I'm sure he tried to reach out to me, but because of my using, listen very carefully, guys, because of my using, because of my whoring, because of me trying to take care of me, I wasn't a good father. And my son couldn't reach me, and he had broken the engine in his car, and he took his motorcycle across the mountain to go see his mother. And my son got killed that night.
Oh, Vance, I didn't know that. I'm sorry to hear that.
My son got killed because of me.
Oh, wow. And he was going at any means necessary. He needed to be there. Wow.
He needed to be there for his mom. And because I wasn't the father that he needed, he drove his motorcycle and somebody ran a stop sign and killed my kid, man. And so how do we deal or cope with something that drastic?
How do you wrap your head around it?
We go use more.
Yeah.
So
That's
then for
the
the
answer.
next 2 years, man, all I did was smoke more, drink more relationships, just more, because I wanted to be out of me. And the only way I can get out of me and out of my mind was by using. 2 years later, I ended up calling my mother one night because I had gone through so much hell. I had fallen asleep in the car and crashed. I had gone through all this crap, man. And I called my mom and said, Mom, I'm going to die tonight, Mom. I'm going to die tonight. And she ran and picked me up, and we went to the hospital. And when we got to the hospital, brother, when on the way inside of the hospital door, I ended up falling on the ground, and I fell into a coma.
Oh my gosh.
I fell
Lights out. Lights out. Just gone, huh?
Lights out. In fact, I'm going to look up here, and we're on the Zoom, so I think you're going to be able to see this. But I ended up actually falling into a coma, and for 28 days, and I'm looking for this photo, guys. That's why I'm looking down. For 28 days, I was in a coma with the respirators on, with the ventilator machines. And so what happened at day 24 was they said, your son, Mr. Johnson is going to die. And so we got to pull the plug on him. So they called all of my children because I had 7 children at the time, and except for the one that had died. So there were 6 of them on a conference call, and they said, we freaking hate him. Let him die. We don't care about him.
Ouch.
And so they propped me up, and they put oxygen in your nose, and they put some wires on you to watch you die. And if you guys can see this photo right here, this was me.
Oh, no way, brother. Whoa.
That's
no
me.
way.
That was day 26 or 27.
No way. That
Because,
what?
but by the grace of God, man, I woke up from that coma. And when I woke up from that coma, guys, I literally, during the coma, during the time that I was legally dying and not being responsive, I had an out-of-body experience. And this is where my story gets deep at. I had an out-of-body experience. I literally told my mother and my father that I saw 2 of my ex-wives come visit me. I saw 2 pastors come and pray over me. I literally had an out-of-body experience where I actually went around into the different areas of the hospital. And I even told the nurse that visited me after I woke up from this coma, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, Vance, that was there, but you haven't been awake."
Yeah,
So
you were over there.
freaked out. Everybody freaked out. After I left this hospital bed, and I went to my mother and father's house. My mother and father, which were still together and still married, and they had grace on me and allowed me to come into their home. I thought to myself, if I just go back to living the way I did when I was a child, somehow I might be able to make it and just work hard and make myself somebody again. So I stayed clean for about 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, back to the original playbook, right? Go back to the original playbook. Mm-hmm.
But that original playbook had an ending, and it happened again. Because then I thought if I could just socially drink, if I could just socially smoke some weed, if I could just socially get into a couple more relationships, I'll be set. Do you know, man, it was just a matter of time before I'm off the wagon again, and the addiction, literally, I call it sin, had taken me over again. So one day I'm driving through a canyon, and I'm just high again, and I'm just screaming out to God because I'm a believer. And I'm like, God, please help me because I can't beat this thing on my own. And I swear to you, I really felt like something came over me and said, you need to get away from you. Yeah. And at that time, my 7th ex-wife had reached out to the NFL. They contacted a former Tampa Bay Buccaneer guy, Randy Grimes, who you know.
Yeah.
And Randy Grimes reached out to me. I went online and I started to watch these videos and listen to him talk. I started to just feel like the Spirit of God was telling me to go away and get help. So I decided, you know what? I'm powerless. I can't do this. And so I got on an airplane and I flew out to Florida. Watch this, guys. 28 days in a coma, 28 days in treatment. And when I got to treatment, the last thing I wanted to do was be there. Because I thought because I'm this famous person, I want to be around athletes. I want to be around people that are like-minded. And so I would not be involved in a community. And I felt the Spirit of God tell me again one day when I was outside looking across the fence and I saw this big cross. Go back in and listen.
Oh my gosh.
When I went back inside there, I started listening to everybody's stories. And I started to see how we all, even though our stories are different, it's the same story.
Yes. Yeah.
We all suffer with emotional, mental health problems. We all suffer with underlying issues. We all are broken. And then I started to learn about addiction. And I started to ask God, is this like my whole journey? Is this the whole reason why I became famous? And I felt the Lord tell me this. Your transparency and your brokenness will be your transformation so that you can lead others out of the pitfalls of the hell of addiction.
Man. When you received that, did you understand the complexity and what it meant at the time? Because I'm thinking you probably thought, well, I'll talk to a few people, but did you have any idea what he had in store for you?
I had no idea what he had in store for me. All I knew is that if he would help me stay clean, that I would seek him and make him number one and not Vance anymore, and then everybody else number two, not me. And that's exactly what I did, man. I'm telling you, when you first get clean, it is hard, it is scary. And I made a promise to myself that when I left treatment, I would not go live my life happily ever after. I would literally stand at the door of a facility and hold my hand out to help people all over the country and all over the world who will reach out to me and say, come follow me. I'm going to show you a way out of this hell. Yeah. I get fired up, man, because this is what I do. I can feel it.
I love it.
This is what I do. It's about saving lives, man. It's about saving lives. And to me, it's about saving souls. Because to me, addiction is a way for the enemy that comes to kill, steal, and destroy to kill you and take you away from your families, to take you away from your children, to take you away from your wives, to take you away from life. That's what the enemy comes to do.
That's 100%. And that's exactly what I teach and preach over here on Team Addict to Athlete. And my 20 years as being a therapist is that when addiction starts to take hold of folks, they start to look at themselves as less than, and I can't, and I won't. They get that victim mentality. But what I've noticed is that when they flip the script and they start doing things on that positive side, they start being able to erase and replace. It's like, well, yeah, that adversary, that dark side, it knows that you're capable of something great, and it doesn't want you to succeed. So it's going to do anything at any means necessary to keep you from achieving what you're supposed to. So think about everything you went through was to put you in that chair down there to help these people right now. And because it knew if it could get you, you wouldn't be able to inspire the millions of people that you already have.
You know what? I praise God for you, man, because what you're saying out of your mouth is a testimony that's going to save so many lives, because that dark side, if it could somehow kill you, then guess how many lives will be lost because you were the one in the voice that they were supposed to hear.
Precisely.
Is that right?
I once read that each person has the capacity to help over 70,000 lives in their lifetime, which means it only takes 8,000 people to change the world.
Right.
And I'm a firm believer that guys like you and me, we're part of the 8,000 so that we can help change this perspective, because it's killing us in droves. And that dark side, it's still catching so many people. I mean, 190 people a day, just opiates alone. I mean, dead every day. It's like
every day.
Like a 747 crashing every day. And who's putting the pieces of the plane back together to find out what's causing it? Well, no one. I'm a firm believer, Vance, and you'll probably like this, that I say the troops aren't coming for us. Like, no one's going to come rescue us. We are the troops, and therefore we have to do what it takes to help get ourselves out of it, right?
That's right,
it's what you're doing.
That's right, man. That's exactly what we do. We're the laborers who are out there in the field so that we can help those that are suffering. And this is what I tell people too. And sometimes it's really hard to hear, but when I travel around the country and I speak with people at treatment programs, I say, I need to tell you guys something that's going to be hard for you to listen to, but it's the truth. What you're dealing with right now, what you're coping with right now, with the struggle with your addiction, is a gift.
Oh, yeah.
It's a gift.
It's funny how in tune you are with what I'm doing, man. You're right. It is. And what do you say to follow it up? Why would they think it's a gift?
And what I say to follow it up is this. If you weren't struggling with what you're going through right now, what would be your testimony of your life?
Absolutely.
Because your life was meant for a purpose. And if this struggle that you're going through, out of generations of family members who have suffered with it, you were the one chosen, because you're the one that's going to break this bondage to this addiction, so that your loved ones, your family members, your children, your friends, your community can see, if he can do it, if she can do it, I can do it.
I got it. That's it. See, that's the premise of what we do on Addict to Athlete. It's these people that don't think they can get recovery, first of all, and then they come onto the team. And we have running as a core just because it's so flippin' easy, but it sucks. Everyone hates it, right? But they feel amazing when they're done. And the first thing they always say when they come onto the team is, well, I'm not a runner. And it's like, well, have you tried? Like, let's walk first. Let's start slowly and building up. Vance, we have dozens of ultra runners now, and people say, "Oh, cross addicting." Oh no, because these people are also going back and helping the people that are stuck on the course once they're done. They're giving service. They're doing the aid stations. They're doing speaking. They're carrying this message of ability and accomplishment to people that never thought they'd have a chance in their lifetime to do anything like this. And it's like, there's no cross addicting there. Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, interesting what you said. You said about the people that said they're not runners. Do you know, I did a post about 6 years ago. I'm only 6.5 years clean, but I talked about if you got to crawl, if you got to crawl, and that's exactly what I did. And I'm going to ask your viewers this question.
Yeah. Right.
So when I went to treatment on the airplane flying out to Florida, I owed the IRS $1 million. I'm sorry, I lied. I owed the IRS $985,000 to the, and then I owed another $125,000 to the state of Colorado. So I owed over $1 million when I went to treatment. I had broken 7 women's hearts. I had abandoned all of my children. It was my fault that one of my kids died. Why would I want to live if I had all of that going on in my life? What purpose would I have? Unless it was for the people that are watching your show right now.
100%.
Because there are fathers right now who are suffering with addictions, who have abandoned their children and their wives and their families, who need to know that what you're going through right now, you can turn around and make your transparency and your brokenness your transformation, so that you can save your life and your family's lives and your children's lives and generations after you.
You know what's funny about that too, as I speak about this, I say, look, and when they don't believe that, you bumped into so many people that don't believe that. It's like, well, look at this. You know, if I say, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to go out and make your life as miserable as possible, could you do it? They're like, well, yeah, absolutely. Right. I say, well, what if I say, go out and make your life as amazing as possible in 5 minutes? Could you do that? And they're like, you guys, the same principles apply. You know, I mean, it's funny how they don't realize that all you do is flip the script. That's why I think people that in recovery and addiction, these are the people that are going to lead the country, they're going to lead the industry.
Right.
These are the people that are going to change what's going on. Even right now with what's going on in our culture right now, these are the people that have gone through tougher things. This stuff they're dealing with now, pennies compared to where they've been. You
Absolutely.
apply those right principles. I mean, Vance, when you had no money, no means necessary, and you wanted to get high, at the end of the day, what were you? You got high. But I say,
Exactly.
well, do that for a job, do that for your recovery. They're like, well, I don't know if I can. I'm like, you guys, it's the same thing. Either you can live in a world of fear or you can live in a world of faith. They are the exact same thing. You burn the same calories. One has a much greater return on investment than the other, but they don't realize how similar all this stuff is. And they get buggered down in the I can'ts and how can I, stuff like that.
I love what you said, man. I love what you said. In fact, say that again. You can either live your life in fear
or faith.
or live your life in faith.
It's the same thing. It's a belief in something you can't see on either side of that coin. But like, right, it's easier to default to fear. But wait a minute, is it? Because you do the same thing in faith. It's just you got to flip the script. And it's so funny how they don't understand that. But you said something that's kind of interesting. I want to touch base on it. I believe there's like 3 stages of love. And you've experienced this in many occasions. The first stage, falling in love. When you fell in love with these women for a moment, for a month, for a year, for however long, that feeling was real. Growing up like you did, kind of similar to what I did with a mother who was literally, Vance, married and divorced 7 times and married at 14. She put us through the ringer as kids, you know? And the thing was, is she did great with the falling in love thing, but inevitably they move into stage 2, which is falling out of love. Mask comes off, all the gooey crap comes out, and they're like, I don't know if I don't like this. You know, you didn't tell me you're a pornography addict or a drug addict or you owe all this money or whatnot. So we're going to stay away. But some of those times you fall out of love for years. My grandparents, they slept in separate bedrooms, for crying out loud, because they couldn't stand each other, but they fell out of love, but they stayed together because you were supposed to. But there's a third stage, and that's learning how to love and learning how to be loved. Right. And it's probably really hard for you to kind of learn how to be loved, but then learn how to be loved by other people.
Because seriously, bro, I really, right. I used to, in these broken relationships, it was always, you better love me the right way. You better love me my way. And it's always the wrong way when you do that. When you fall in love with someone, you're supposed to be loved, right? Yeah. You're supposed to be loved, because be loved doesn't judge. Be loved doesn't just say, because you're not treating me right, I'm going to leave you. Be love is, what can I do so that I can make your life better, so I can make you happy, so I can show you in a way that we should go. But don't get me wrong. People are broken. Relationships get broken. And I'm going to be very transparent with you. I'm going through some stuff right now, again, in another relationship. And I have been over a year and a half now. But I'm not a whore no more. I'm not going to go I'm not going to cope by doing anything that's going to take me out of me. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to show God what he called me to do. You show me what love is. Don't go just try to fill your flesh with somebody else and do something else. You show me love, Vance. And that's exactly what I want to do.
And that's the thing, right? Is how many times have you seen someone that you've reached and pulled them into the program or given them that, turn on that light? And what do you feel for them when they walk back out and they're like, Vance, you saved my life? What kind of love is that?
It's a daily thing, man. It's a daily, and you know what though, brother? And that's what's really awesome about what you're doing, because that's your fruit. Yeah. And I'm a man in scripture, so I love my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And it says this: your fruit will bear witness of who you are. And your fruit are all the lives that you're saving.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's it too, right? Faith without works. You've got to do the work in order for it to kind of kick into place. Yeah. See, that's why when I was reading your stories and stuff, and I remember it was interesting. I saw a video and it started off by talking about you running. And you said you were always running away from something. And I was watching it, I thought, but I see him running towards something. You know, even though you were running away from something, you were running towards something too.
Wow, I love that.
I started thinking, yeah, you were, but I looked at it in a different light. Tell me what you've been running towards now. Tell us a little bit about the last few years where you've really kind of, you've written books, you've been doing a ton of speaking and things. What have you really been kind of like occupying some of your soul, your heart's work towards? What are you doing?
What I'm running towards the throne of God. That's what I'm doing. Because as a man in faith, in knowing that the only reason and the only way that Vance Johnson got clean was because of the grace of God and because of what his son did. And I'm going to have to preach at you guys, and I hope I don't lose any of you, because I tell you that, and I'm going to preface this real quick, there are many roads to recovery.
Yes.
Many roads to recovery. but my road lands me in the kingdom of heaven. And I want to save souls. And so I know, because my addiction led me to so many different types of sins, that there are those out there that are believers like me who want to be free from that bondage. And to me, if the woman at the well who was married 5 times, I'm the man at the well, can be free because of that living water that Jesus Christ gave her, then I want that living water too, so I can lead people to living water and out of the bondage of the sin of addiction. Because addiction leads you to sin. It leads you to lies. It leads to abuse. It leads to just more and more things that are going to just separate our families. I want to serve my God in heaven by following his son, Christ Jesus, and leading all those to the hope and truth and knowledge of Jesus. And that's who I am, man.
I love it,
you know,
man.
sometimes the enemy comes and tells me, stop talking about Jesus Christ. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to help anyone. That's not true, because I'm not here to judge. In fact, I tell people this. Jesus said in the book of Revelation, I would rather you be cold or hot. You know what that means? I don't want you to be in between. Because if you're cold, then you know what?
I know where you stand.
That means you're probably suffering and dealing with some stuff. You can catch on fire.
Yeah, but don't be in the middle. Yeah,
don't be in the middle.
Literally pick which team you're playing for, right? I mean,
wow, man, you must know your scripture. It says that too.
Absolutely.
Choose this God this day who you choose.
Yeah, and you're spot on, man. Which is kind of a cool thing too, because you talk about how, you know, when they lifted you up and your children were looking at you and they're like, let him go, you know. To me, I'm thinking that had to be a rough like idea to like kind of process in your head. But then I realized too that when you make change, how many people really believe it's for real, right? Like how many people really thought you're saying this now because you just had this really scary issue, you know? Like, you know, again, Bible dictionary. Look at the word repentance. Repentance is awesome because it's like it's a changing of a heart, it's changing of your mind, and you're having a fresh view on the situation.
Exactly.
You woke up from all that and you had that fresh view, and you're like, oh, I'm doing something different. How many people didn't believe that Vance Johnson was going to turn over a new leaf? How many people thought that, like, you're just saying that, it's not going to happen?
Yeah, you know, another thing too, I really believe, and I tell people this all the time, don't go home when you leave from treatment thinking just because you left treatment that you're okay now. Don't go home and expect people to be okay with you, because a lot of them have dealt with a lot of trauma and a lot of issues that you put them through. You go home and say this: don't believe anything I say or do right now. Let me walk this thing out and prove it to you. And then I tell them this. Have you heard that saying that time heals all wounds?
Yeah.
I said, that's a lie. Time don't heal wounds. You know what heals wounds? Forgiveness. Forgiveness heals wounds. And that's the very thing I had to do, was forgive her father for his abusive behavior, the stuff that I saw as a kid. I had to forgive everybody who ever did anything against me. And then I had to walk this thing out and just pray to God that somehow my relationships would be restored. And I'm going to tell you another thing, brother. Do you know that my children are all starting to reach out and say, Dad, I forgive you.
Yeah.
My kids are starting to do that. One of my daughters, my oldest child, she showed up at the Vance Johnson Recovery Center here in Las Vegas, surprised me. And I walked downstairs, man, and I was like, oh my gosh. I brought her upstairs and I introduced her to some of the clients here, some of the patients. And I proved to them that time doesn't heal wounds, forgiveness does. And my daughter forgave me because she saw me walk this thing out, and she's seen that I've been clean.
I'm so glad you said that too, because I've always kind of like had a weird taste in my mouth for that statement. And it is interesting. I once talked to another professional who was saying that the scars will always hurt and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, baloney, the scars don't hurt, because you've been injured, you've been cut, you have a scar on your body. You look at it and you're like, man, I remember when I got that hurt, and you can remember the pain, but it doesn't hurt anymore. Why? Because you can forgive, you can move on, you can, you know, it'll always be there, but you don't have to like be plagued by it anymore. And I love that mindset too, of like, it's about that forgiveness, which is how hard was it for you to personally forgive yourself, you know, to be able to talk about your son and to feel it inside and be like, oh, it still hurts. But to also kind of say, I'm going to keep talking about him because I love him. And I don't want to ever forget that lesson that I learned. I mean, brother,
I made a promise. Amazing. I made a promise to myself and to God. And I made a promise to my son, because when I went out to go look for my son at his gravesite, because again, it was my fault that my son died. And when I went out looking for my son's gravesite, I was high. And so I didn't know where he was buried at. Yeah. And for hours, we walked around looking for that gravesite. And when I gave up and was going to leave, I went and asked the grave digger if he could tell me where my son was at. And he radioed in and he recognized me like, oh my God, you're Vance Johnson, the Bronco. I said, brother, just tell me where my son is.
Please,
He radioed in. And do you know, my son was buried in my birth date, 3/13.
Oh my God.
Plot 3 in row 13.
Whoa.
And I was like, oh my God.
That's not a
When I went out
coincidence.
to that gravesite, I laid across his grave and I said, son, I am so sorry. I love you so much. And for the rest of my life, I promise you, I'm going to go try to save dads so they don't have to be like me, whose fault it was that they lost a son. And so that's exactly what I do every single day, man. That's all I care about. And I made a promise to God, and every day is what I do.
Gee, brother, man, that stuff doesn't happen by accident. You can't write that stuff. That's divine intervention. Yeah,
you can't write that stuff, man.
No, and it's those subtle reminders so that you don't forget, so you don't make the same mistake, and so that you can like cherish. And we do this thing on Team Addict Athlete when we do these runs and stuff. We'll go out and do organized runs and things that we talk about running proxy for people. And so we run proxy for guys like you and your son and things like that to keep their memories alive and stuff. We take them with us. We fill them with us. You know, since our inception, we've lost 12 athletes to addiction and people that we loved and ran with, and it's heartbreaking. But when we run proxy for them, it's that giving back. It's that, so we don't forget, you know, and it's what you're doing, man. Like, that's, I'll be honest with you, man. I did not think this is where this conversation was going to go. I tell you, like, I'm so happy that you're doing the emotional stuff because, again, I'm super impressed and I love talking about like your career. I think it's great, but you know, it's just a career. It's what you're doing now. It's what you're doing to serve your fellow man and to get them in the mindset of like, you don't have to just settle. Don't take a knee, get up and go. Like,
right.
I'm kind of amazed, man, that this is who you are now. And
well, you know what, you really build me up today, man, and especially because you made a comment about even though I was running away from something, I was actually running towards this.
Yeah.
And so you just really built me up, and God bless you for that. I really appreciate it, and it's exactly what I do, and that's the reason why we had the Vance Johnson Recovery here in Las Vegas. I had a chance, man, to run into and be under a really good friend of mine. Many of you may have heard of a former Eagles quarterback, Hall of Famer, Randall Cunningham.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's here. Actually, he's my pastor here in Las Vegas. If you heard of Ray Lewis, another Hall of Famer, a great guy. He was here not too long ago. Rod Woodson moved to Las Vegas. I mean, I've got a lot of brothers who are former NFL greats that are my friends now, and they're going to be joining me, and I'm going to be inviting over here to share with some of the clients that we bring into the Vance Johnson Recovery Center.
That is awesome. You know, and so let's do that. I know we are running out of time a little bit, but tell me a little bit about this program that you've started. And because like I said, we get lots of people that are asking for referrals, and, you know, we go down through that place all the time. I'll have to swing by and check out your facility. I'd love to tour it and to give a little bit of a heads up to the athletes who may need that kind of assistance to get up on their recovery. How do they, tell me a little bit about the facility. What's your mindset on it?
So what I'm doing now, and I just love how this happened. You know, right after I got clean, I just asked God to just really give me a chance to show him who I am. And I got a call from an amazing company called Oglethorpe Inc. And Oglethorpe Inc. has about 14 different hospital facilities around the country who are offering people help with different types of treatment with mental illness and addiction. And we sat in a meeting one day, and the CEO decided that he wanted to name a center after me. And it was in Las Vegas. So I'm literally the prodigal son, man, because Las Vegas is a place where I ended up losing everything. But this is the exact place that God needed to put me so that I could show the truth in the walk in recovery. And so the Vance Johnson Recovery Center out here in Las Vegas is a place that is going to offer great modalities to help people with their treatment. I'm a man of faith, so I'll be doing devotionals here. I'll be working out with people here. And if people want to reach out to me, there are a couple different ways they can do it. They can go to the Vance Cares website, because I do care. You see my tears, man.
I can tell.
I care. You can go to the VanceJohnsonRecoveryCenter.com website. And the other way you can reach out to me is my phone number, and that is my football number, 888-82-VANCE. That's 888-82-VANCE. Or go to my Vance Inspires Facebook page and reach out to me personally, and I'll respond and do whatever I can to lead whoever's struggling into treatment or to another facility around the country, because that's what we do. We want to save lives.
Awesome. That is awesome. Listeners, that's the ticket right there. And Vance, when this posts and then when we put the podcast out there as well, we will make sure we get all the links and stuff to those sites and things so that people can connect with you, because they'll feel your passion, man. Like I said, this is not where I thought it would go. Most of the time as a therapist, and a drug counselor and all this stuff, I'm always kind of like, all right, now let's get into that. But I can tell that your mindset is such that you are on an incredible mission, and you are going to help and save thousands of lives if they are willing to reach out to you, which is the hardest part, which is asking for help. Athletes, listeners alike, if you need help, there it is. It's there. It's just take the hand, right?
Yes, brother. Absolutely.
I love it, man. I love it.
And that's why I really appreciate what you're doing and what you're offering with the help, man. And the other thing that's really awesome too, that I see that you're doing, and this is what I tell people, when Jesus Christ went and found the people that he wanted to follow him, his disciples and apostles, they were fishermen, and they went out to be fishers of men. Well, guess what they used? They used nets, right? Well, guess what you're using? You're using the internet. So
that's
use
right,
your net,
man.
go out there and save those men.
I love that. That's a brilliant mindset, and that's true, guys. And Vance, you're speaking exactly the same principles and the philosophies the Addict Athlete does, and I love it. So therefore, I know that everything you've said today is going to resonate with our athletes and listeners alike, because that's how they find the podcast. Awesome. And so, listeners, you've been well fed today, and we do look forward to working more with Vance because of some of his passion, because of some of his abilities to reach out. And like I said, Xavier also taught by metaphor, and there's no better way to teach metaphor than through sport, and that's what we do too. It's the same principles to become an amazing elite athlete you can use metaphorically to become an amazing individual in recovery. And so we just keep plugging along. So I want to thank Radio Ronin and the Radio Ronin Network for hosting the Addict Athlete podcast. And Chunga, Josh, or all you guys, thank you so much for all you do for Addict Athlete, getting our message out there even further. And athletes, again, you've been well fed today. Let's take this message to heart and help turn that mess into a very powerful message.